Home sellers, do not listen to listing agents with respect to compensation of buyer's agents. And please do not sign a listing agreement in which you put anything other than down than zero in that spot for compensation of buyer's agents. And also, I would advise that you do not let your listing agent to put more than zero in the MLS as an offer of compensation of buyer's agent. First, though, before I explain why, I'm going to let the president of the National Association of Realtors set this whole thing up so you know what the background is when I come in and I show you what the Department of Justice says, what steering is, and what they said in the no-select case. But here, let's hear it from the president of the National Association of Realtors, Kevin Sears. And also compliments or props to the host who challenged him on it or followed up on it. Rightly so.
Good story, right? So yes, it can. And that's one of the things, what I'll tell you about the settlement that we had, and despite what others said, we met with the plaintiff's attorneys before the trial, during the trial, and obviously after the trial. We were open to settling the claims. But what the plaintiffs and their attorneys had said originally, it was very much like what the DOJ said in the Nozelak case in Massachusetts. They wanted to completely decouple the offers of compensation.
Correct.
Now, I'm going to go over the Nozelak case right here. I'm an attorney and a broker. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know the answer. So I have no idea how the president of N.A.R. could pretend to know the answer about whether it's okay for a listing agent to go in there and negotiate buyer's agent compensation. Everything tells me that it's wrong, according to the Department of Justice. They've called it a violation of antitrust laws. They've called it steering, which is tantamount to calling it illegal. And I'm going to explain that right here. So here, why is that going there? Oh, I got to skip that ad and save that. Sorry, because I'm going to show that next. Okay, so here, this is the no-select case that he was just talking about. No-select versus MLS Property Information Network. That's Massachusetts MLS, Massachusetts-based MLS. Now, on page 8, the DOJ, and this is what he talked about, the DOJ wants to decouple, which means the listing agent should only negotiate the level of compensation for the listing agent. The efforts that a listing agent puts in to sell a home with the seller. The seller and the listing agent work together. The seller compensates the listing agent. The buyer and the buyer agent work together. The buyer would be compensating the buyer's agents. The DOJ and the plaintiff's lawyers wish to decouple offers of compensation. And here's not only in the beginning of this, they talk about the anti-competitive behavior of realtors, but then they also talk about on page 8 that the price fixing can happen because realtors will steer their clients, their buyers, to the properties that are offering higher levels of compensation, the ones that are at the standard rate of commission or higher, and steer them away from those that are lower. And if you go to Google and type in, as I did, what is steering in real estate, you'll see that steering refers to the illegal practice of directing prospective home buyers toward or away from a particular neighborhood or area based on protected characteristics. And yes, as an attorney, I can attempt to distinguish that illegal practices of steering for race or religion practices is a little different than causing steering because of levels of compensation, but nevertheless, they characterized it as steering. And later, and I think I could go to it on page 20, but I'm not going to do that now, they also explained why offering percentage levels of compensation of buyer's agents could result in the buyer's agent having their buyer pay more. So that the DOJ was hinting that it would be unethical or illegal for a seller to offer compensation to a buyer's agent because that might compromise the buyer's agent's fiduciary duty to the buyer. That's a very important point. So there's 3 things that are going on with offers of, especially blanket offers of compensation, that can be illegal. It could be violation of antitrust laws. It can result in steering, and cause buyers to not even see their properties that they should be seeing, cause them to overpay for properties. It can cause commissions to be set as too high a level. So that's anti-competitive, steering, and compromising of fiduciary duties. That's three right off the top that the DOJ addresses. I'm sure they have other reasons. So I want to continue with this for a second, and then I'll talk to you about what I think a seller should do.
So we fought for our membership and the consumer, saying, let the consumer decide how they want compensation to happen. So yes, in your listing agreement, you get to sit down with Mr. and Mrs. Seller and say, here's the listing agreement. These are the services I'm going to provide.
So those are the So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, these are the services I'm going to provide. They're speaking as a listing agent to the seller, saying, I will provide these services, and presumably I will ask for 3%, 2%, or a flat fee for doing this work for you to help you sell your home.
And if you want to offer compensation to a buyer broker, then this is what it's going to be.
And if you wish to offer compensation to a buyer's broker, this is what it's going to be. Now, is that not a violation? Well, put it this way. A stunning development happened on Friday. If I can pull it up. On Friday, a federal appeals court on Friday said the U.S. Justice Department can reopen an investigation into the residential real estate policies of the National Association of Realtors, more than 3 years after the trade group settled related government claims. Now, they settled them under Trump. They're trying to reopen them under Biden, and the appellate court said they could. And now we know, because out of the president's own mouth, it's because they're trying to decouple the practice of this.
And at the end of the day, I would much rather
of negotiating the level of compensation for buyer's agents and putting it into the listing agreement. I mean, it seems to me, such a incredibly blatant disregard of the entire point of why N.A.R. and these major brokerages were sued for $1.8 billion, and they're agreeing to settle for much less. The whole idea that listing agents are going in and negotiating the level of the buyer's agents ahead of time because of N.A.R. got these realtors in crazy situations. So what's my solution? My solution is this. Until the Department of Justice, the DOJ, opines on what is legal and what is illegal, what is ethical, what is unethical, what is steering, what is not illegal steering or unethical steering, whether a buyer's agent is being compromised by a seller and a listing agent by that level of compensation. If you as a seller or wish to offer compensation on buyer's agents, and believe me, I understand there are times you want to, because it may result in your property selling faster or a higher net. You need to have an attorney advising you on how to do it well at that period of time in your locality, given your state laws. And I would, if it was my home and I was selling my home and I was offering compensation to buyer's agents, and I might in the future, I would make sure that that buyer agent was getting, that buyer's agent's, I would want evidence on the closing that there was a buyer attorney on the HUD. I would want to see that buyer attorney being paid on the HUD, right? Now, if that buyer attorney is being paid on the HUD, then it might be okay to have compensation going to a buyer's agent directly from the seller or the listing agent if a listing agent wants to get involved in that. But first, the lawyer's getting paid on the HUD. Then the buyer agent can get paid on the HUD. And then I would have all sorts of disclaimers and disclosures signed by that buyer, pretty much waiving any right they might have to sue me in the future, or to sue me, let's say the price of the property goes down and the buyer's unhappy and wants to go in and reopen it. I don't want that buyer to be able to visit a lawyer and a lawyer have an easy time reopening it. So I want him to look at that HUD, see an attorney was on the buyer's team. I also want some disclosures saying the buyer understood that compensation was going to the buyer's agent and what it was doing. So that is how, in short, so what's my takeaway? Do not sign a listing agreement with a compensation offer to a buyer's agent ever until the DOJ opines on this subject and it's determined not to be illegal or some other authority that's trustworthy. And I would not offer compensation on the MLS, and I would not make blanket offers of compensation on any websites, the Realtors, Zillow, DOJ, unless I had a lawyer advising me, and I made sure that all buyers had an attorney getting paid on the hood if I were doing that. All right, thank you. My name is John McConnin. I'm a real estate attorney and a broker. My overall information site, I'm turning it into a blog right now at winnerscheck.com. And if you'd like to work with us, right now, flatfeeadvantage.com is my real estate website where my brokerage would help people sell homes properly, and we could refer you out to listing realtors all over the country who follow the practices that we have. But that is subject to change as the websites evolve. Thanks, John McConnin, real estate attorney and broker. In short, no offers of compensation to buyers unless you're well advised by an attorney. I don't understand the idea that you can just go in and negotiate the buyer's co-op on the listing agreement. I don't know why any seller would sign that. What's the advantage of the seller? Thanks. Talk to you later. Bye.